Behavioural economics on a post-it 21. In this short video, I'm just going to very briefly describe a couple of other heuristics or rules of thumb in individual behaviour. So this kind of follows on from the previous two, I think, the previous couple of videos on heuristics. And then I'll finish on I'll finish on here. There's many more heuristics and rules of thumb in the literature, but I'll finish on these two. One that I'm not going to talk about, I don't think at all, really, in all of the videos. It's not really a heuristic, but it's sometimes classified as a bias, and sometimes these two that I'm going to be talking about are classified as biases as well, rather than heuristics, and that is status quo bias. So status quo bias, or if it is a bias, but let's assume it is a bias, is the observation that people are quite sticky in their positioning. They don't tend to move from where they are very much, even if moving could create benefits to themselves or benefits to other people. It's related to, it might be a factor behind the work on default effects. So the classic example of that is around organ donation. So if you have a country that has an opt-in system, people have to actively register to be organ donors, you generally find that far fewer people are registered on an organ donation list than if people have to actively opt out. It's called presumed consent sometimes, if they actively have to opt out of an organ donation registration system. And one of the big explanations for why there are such differences between opt-in and opt-out countries is because people, or many people, generally don't move from the position that you place them in. People are very good at not moving, basically. So that's the status quo bias that I'm not going to talk. Well, I talked a little bit there, but I'm not going to be talking about that any further. The two heuristics that I'm just going to mention very briefly are overconfidence heuristic and confirmation heuristic, or overconfidence bias and confirmation bias. So overconfidence is the observation, as the name suggests, that people generally perceive themselves to be much better at things often than they objectively are. So you could have, and there's been lots of studies where you ask people a series of general knowledge questions, and you ask them how confident they were that they were right in the questions that they answered, and as a percentage, what percentage indicates the confidence that they're right. So people might say they're 90% confident that they're right in the questions that they answered, and then you can objectively look at how they performed, and generally their objective performance is lower than their confidence statement. So they might have been 70% right, and they were confident that they would be 90% of the time. Look, there's been quite a few studies measuring confidence, if you like, in those sorts of ways. If you ask people, more sort of informally, I suppose, if you ask people if they, most people might think that they're better than average drivers. If they drive a car, they might think that they're better than average. Most people might think they're better than average. Most people can't objectively be better than average, can they? And I put a little statement there. This is what President Trump said in March the 24th, 2020. Then President Trump, 18 months ago from the time that I'm speaking now. No, more than 18 months ago. 21 months ago or something like that. President Trump, I want the nation, the US, opened up and just raring to go by Easter. That might have been an element of overconfidence at work there, right? But then again, President Trump might have been overconfident in many aspects of his decision-making behaviours. The confirmation bias or confirmation heuristic This is and we all do this, it's the observation that we form beliefs, really. We have ideas and beliefs and views about things, and then we kind of search for evidence that supports our pre-existing beliefs and views, rather than being, guided by an objective balance of all the available evidence, and then reaching a balanced opinion on the basis of that evidence. Much of the time, we just search and pick out those particular pieces of evidence that support our pre-existing views. And we all do this. Think about it, we do it. It's just part of the human condition. And politicians are, I wouldn't say especially susceptible, but they're certainly very strongly susceptible to this particular phenomena as well. And I've just pointed out a quote from our former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, that I think demonstrates very powerfully and tragically, I think, the effects that the confirmation heuristic can have if it's deployed in the wrong places, I guess. I mean, it must have, as I said in previous post-its, there must be legitimate explanations for the confirmation heuristic. Otherwise, why would it exist? But it can be deployed such that it can have huge negative consequences. So Tony Blair said, April 10th, 2002, Saddam Hussein's regime is developing weapons of mass destruction, and we cannot leave him doing so unchecked. I think we know from history that selective evidence was referred to and used to support the conclusion that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Not that that's to say that, Saddam Hussein, that we can say anything positive at all about Saddam Hussein, I think. Okay, so those are the two heuristics that I'll leave us on before I move on to different phenomena in future post-it notes. This is Behavioural Economics on a post-it number 21.